Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hot Zone. I'm your host, Jason Robinson. And in the Hot Zone today, we have got ABC News correspondent, anchor, and best-selling author, Miss Lindsay Davis. We're going to speak to Lindsay today about her brand new children's book, Stay This Way Forever, about co-anchoring ABC Weekend World News Tonight, about speaking with her son about police brutality in America, and about Vice President Kamala Harris making history. All that and more. So stay tuned, because you're in the Hot Zone.
Senator Harris, you released your plan for that just this week, and it does contradict some of your prior positions. Among them, you used to oppose the legalization of marijuana, now you don't. You used to oppose outside investigations of police shootings, now you don't. You've said that you changed on these and other things because you were, quote, swimming against the current, and thankfully the currents have changed. But when you had the power, why didn't you try to effect change then?
And welcome back to the Hot Zone. We are joined by ABC News correspondent and anchor and best-selling author, Lindsay Davis. Welcome to the Hot Zone, Lindsay.
Hey, Jason, so happy to be on with you.
It's my pleasure to have you, Lindsay. Listen, I'm just so excited about your new children's book. It's a really great book, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later so you can explain it. But first, I want to talk a little bit about, like, how are you and your family doing? And the reason I ask that is because, you know, we see you on ABC News talking about the news and reporting on it every day, from Black Lives Matter to COVID-19 to all the crazy political news going on. But how have you and your family been dealing with all of this throughout the past year?
Yeah, we're hanging in there, but I am optimistic. My son is back at school 4 days out of the week, and so that is progress, because things got hectic when I was trying to homeschool. We were in the epicenter, or the initial epicenter of COVID when it hit the United States, and so our school district was one of the first to send kids back home. And so trying to balance that, and at the same time, I've been coming into work every day throughout the pandemic. And so I was staying a little longer at home before I was coming in, but I still had to get work done, and still trying to teach my son and give him recess and all of that, and make breakfast and lunch and dinner. And I'm tired thinking about it all over again. But at least now, with him going 4 days a week, I think that it's just, emotionally it's good for him, and socially it's good for him, and certainly from an educational aspect, and from being able to focus on work. For me, it's been good too, to have a little bit of that separation of church and state, if you will, there. But we were able to have breakfast together as a family and lunch together as a family, and still get to do that often on Wednesdays, and so that's really been a blessing. And so I don't want to just be pessimistic about the whole experience, but it was intense for a while. But I also want to think that it made me a better journalist, because I was going through it with everybody else. I had the same questions about how to keep my family safe and educate and balance, do the juggle and everything. So I think that my questions that I had when I put on my reporter hat were really informed from a place of, how do I keep my family on track and safe and healthy? And I hope that comes through for the viewers. But it's a very long way of answering that we are good. We are good.
Okay. Well, listen, and that's the most important thing. And just like you said, you got to spend time with family, and family throughout this all, and we've all learned this, and that's the most important thing at the end of the day.
Yes.
So now let me ask you this. Now, you are a career woman, you are a mother, which is your number one job, most important job, and you're also a wife. Juggling all of those three very important jobs, how have you been able to do it so successful? And what were maybe the biggest challenges that you have to face by juggling all of those very important jobs?
I think that is the biggest challenge, is the juggle, right? But I think that being successful, I don't think that it's measured in a constant, right? The measure of success, I think, is ultimately that you hit certain marks by a certain point in time, right? And so I think that there are times that I'm pouring into my marriage, and there are times that I'm pouring into my son, and there are times that I'm pouring into to work, particularly, because I have a deadline every single day with work.
Yeah.
And so that's something that that you're conscious of, that you have to meet every day, because when the show starts at 7 o'clock or 6:30, I got to be there and ready to go. There are certain aspects of within marriage or within parenting, that the memories and the meaning that you create. So maybe every day you're not kind of hitting like you want to, right? But let's say you take that special time out. I've been very deliberate and intentional with my son in going out on dates with him, and making sure that he knows that he's a priority, because sometimes I'm on the phone way too much doing work from home. But I have, said, hey, we're going out for lunch today. Or, hey, it was a sunny day and it was a half day and I was able to still be at home and pick him up from school. And so I said, we're going to walk home, we're going to walk through the woods home. And so I think that very intentional memory building, those moments that are going to become memories, I think that sustains my son till the next time, and so I think that he's good. If I'm not pouring into him every single day and going to lunch with him every single day and going on that hike every single day, I think that he's like, but mommy did that. And I'd like to think that my husband is of that same mindset, where he knows that I'm really showing up for our marriage and showing up for him. May not be, moment by moment, every hour of every day, but when he really needs it, I think that he knows that I'm there, and I'm surprising him sometimes too, with having that very intentional and deliberate time. And so I think that when people talk about that juggle, each ball is not getting the same amount of attention at the same time. You're making sure one is not just crashing onto the ground.
Right.
So it's just a matter of somehow you're keeping them in the air, but not necessarily with the same, equality.
What's the one bit of advice that you would give women who are in, your shoes, that they do have to do that juggle with, motherhood and being a wife, and obviously, managing their career? What's the one bit of advice that you would give them to make sure that they're able to achieve that without forgetting about themselves? Because that's very important.
Yeah. Okay. So you just answered that question in the back part of the question, because I was going to say it's going to sound counterintuitive, because the way that I'm going to say that you can do everything else, first, you have to make sure you're good so that you can do it. Right. And so, for me, that might be running, and it may seem like you're being selfish, but you've got to give yourself that permission to take that hour, 30 minutes, whatever it might be, that you can kind of carve out. Maybe it means you have to wake up a little bit earlier, or you stay up a little bit later, for whatever that hobby is, whatever that me time is, whatever it is that you find that like fulfills or satiates your soul and your spirit and kind of refuels you. I think that it's so important that we remember that. And we're going to be better parents and better spouses if we feel refreshed. And so, sometimes I do feel guilty when I'm going to take that run, but again, I'll try and wake up a little bit earlier to get it in. And by the time, those endorphins start and neurotransmitters start going, I feel better, like I'm a better wife and a better mom.
Well said. And I agree with you 100%. You got to take care of yourself. Like God says, God helps those who help themselves. So you got to love yourself before you can love anyone else and be of service to anyone else. So
amen.
Amen. So tell me this. Listen, I am so excited about your brand new children's book. It's called Stay This Way Forever. And it's a great book, a best-selling children's book. Tell us all about your new children's book and why you decided to write it.
My son inspired me unintentionally. When he was just a newborn, I was thinking, I could do this. And over time, the idea of I could do this became I should do this, because, there are two major factors. One, I'm in the news business, and a lot of people, I think it's such a departure to write children's book. But at the heart of it, I consider myself a storyteller. And so it's just, in one way, I find it an escape to be able to write about, uplifting good news, right? Telling the good news through children's books. But at the same time, I felt compelled to do it when I started realizing how difficult it was to really find books with characters who look like my son. And so rather than, complain about the problem, I figured let me be a part of the solution. And initially I was just going to write one.
Okay.
And then that one did so well, and the publisher came back and said, all right, what are we going to do next? And this is now my third book.
Nice.
And thank you. Each one has been inspired by a question that my son asked or something that he said to me that made me think, that's what it's going to be. It's really come all the time, each time, from a very authentic place that as a parent, I thought, how do I answer that question?
Yeah.
And so this one was really me thinking, boy, I ought to journal more about parenthood and this time and really savor these moments. And then I thought, I'm going to write a children's book about it. All of these different things, my son is super creative. So we'll get him Lego sets, right? But then he ends up taking that apart and then he creates his own thing, right?
Okay.
And, the pitter patter of his feet when he's like running in bed with us, in the mornings, on the weekends. And these moments that I started thinking, one day I'm going to miss this. You just want to press the pause button and savor and memorize these times before they slip away. And so that's what this book is really about. That was just inspired by all the day-to-day moments and the stages of childhood that I just savor and the aspects that I hope that he'll hold on to as well. His curiosity and his creativity and his joy for life. My son still skips.
Yeah.
And I know at some point he's going to stop skipping, but when he talks about, he'll tell me his plans for the next day and he'll say, this is what I'm going to do. And it's going to be the best day ever. And he really sincerely means that. And I hope that when he's 30 and when he's 40, he's still telling me about how he's excited about the future and he's the tomorrow is still going to be so joyful for him. I really hope that he'll hold on to that. And I think that a lot of parents are going to really be able to relate to all these different stages of this playground that is childhood.
I was going to ask you, do you sometimes just wish that Aiden would just stay that way, that 7-year-old son that he is right now, forever, right? Because at the blink of an eye, he's going to be 30 years old. And be
exactly. So, because we know that's an impossibility, right? But so that's why I think it's really intentional to savor the moments. And that's why I thought more than a journal, that I could really put it all out there in a way that other parents were going to really relate to and say, that's how I feel too. And that's what I've been getting back. And so I'm so glad that it's being received in the way that I put it out there, because yes, we would love to be able to, keep our kids now. Even when I'm looking back at when he was an infant, I'm like, oh my goodness, like where did that little baby go? But they grow up and you want them to grow up.
Yeah. So what would you say is the most important message that you want children, and not just the children, but parents to get from the book as well?
Sure. I hope that when children hear this book or read it themselves, that they know just how much they are loved and adored and cherished by their parents. I think that regardless of all the outside noise or your upbringing or the amount of access that you have, I think that at the root is knowing you are loved, and you are loved, by whoever it is that's raising you or has an opportunity to put some fingerprints on your life. I think that is such the gift of really evolving out of childhood with some ease or some success is knowing that there's somebody who loved you, whether it's mom and dad or grandma and grandpa. And so I hope that as children are reading this, they're going to feel how much they're valued. And I hope that for parents too, because, I'm still, even though my son can read now, but we still read to him every night. And so I think as a parent, you want to know that you're pouring into your child and you're inspiring them and you're kind of instilling some good values into them. And so as a parent, I hope that parents are delighted by, sharing these words with their children and feeling that it's very personal, because I think that, again, I'm not unique in what I'm feeling for my son and as a parent. And I think that everybody is going to relate as they read these pages and read these words. I think that it's something that everybody's going to say, this is how I feel. And I think that that's going to translate as kids hear it directly from their parents or grandparents' mouth.
Yeah. I agree with you. And I also read somewhere where you don't necessarily like Aiden watching the news because a lot of times it's very heavy. Right. So How do you go about, especially in times like this with the killing of George Floyd and now Derek Chauvin is on trial? How do you, bring up the news with Aiden about Black Lives Matter, and
Yeah.
you're raising a young Black boy who's going to be a man on one day? How do you bring up tough topics like Black Lives Matter?
Interestingly, I don't bring them up.
Okay.
He brings them up. I do think it kind of in the same way of the book, I really am trying to preserve innocence as long as I can, as much as I can. But at the same time, I'm realistic to know that even if we turn the TV off and he's not watching the news, last year in 2020, the news came to him on Main Street, when he would see the protests and he would see the pictures and the images of George Floyd, and he started asking me about Black Lives Matter. What does that mean? My life matters, and so why do people have to say Black Lives Matter? And that was
Right.
But it was interesting because I would learn sometimes from my own show. We'd have, an educator on who'd say, if they're old enough to ask the question, they're old enough to hear the answer. So I'd be like, oh, okay. So I'm gonna go home, right. And this is, how I'm gonna, when I take off my reporter hat and put on my parent hat.
Yeah.
And kids are talking about it too. Now that he's back at school, and the kids will tell him certain things that he'll come home and ask that I'm like, oh, wow, we're there already,
Yeah.
Right. And so it's hard. I think that in 2020, there was this momentum of, parents that were trying to figure out. I actually saw there was a more than a 2,000% increase year over year in parents starting to search online, how to raise empathetic children and how to raise children who embrace diversity. And so parents were really trying to figure out how they could answer these questions and how they could tackle these, really tough societal issues. But my son, we were watching TV and we weren't watching the news, but a promo came on for the noon news. Okay. And there was like a still video, a frozen video of Ahmaud Arbery. Right. And they said what happened. And so, he was like, well, why did they shoot him? And so I just was like, had this internal moment where I was grappling with, what do I say? Yeah. Because again, I told you, my son still skips, and I want him to keep skipping. I don't want to have to weigh him down with this albatross of his skin. But at the same time, I remember I was running, which is my release. That's like what I do. Mm-hmm. And I became so emotional about it, thinking about this moment of, it was right, maybe like a week removed from George Floyd. Right. And I was thinking, my son at the time was 6. But I was thinking about Tamir Rice, who was just 12. And so I was like, man, I don't have a lot of time before we need to have this conversation. At the same time, I don't want to, burden him down. So it's like, it's this tightrope of talking to him about, how skin color, how people will perceive you a certain way, and we don't know that, it's not right, but that's how some people think. Yeah. And so we just have to be aware of how people think. And it's kind of like I talked to him in terms of like bullies at school, and how we handle that. Right. And how we stand up to bullies, and we protect our friends. Right. And, we've kind of thrown in, skin color in there sometimes, but it's hard. Being a parent, I never realized until, especially now, it's almost like La La Land until, it was like really confronted face to face with my son. And, but it's healthy at the same time. And I'm glad that he's coming to us for the answers. Yeah. And, to be continued, stand by for news as far as how well we answered those questions, that remains to be seen. But, I think just trying to give them a healthy dose of the truth and reality is helpful in the end.
Yeah, you see little kids play together all the time, and they don't notice about skin color. They just enjoy each other. They love each other. I saw those little boys, the little white boys, they laughed each other and hugged each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Just all love. It's the adults that bring this.
Look, I have said so many times that people get it wrong. People say, oh, kids don't see color. They absolutely do see color. They just don't assign a value to it. It's adults who do that. And
Right.
so really we need to be childlike in our thinking, because my son, when he would go off to camp or school,
Mhm.
when he'd say, oh, I have a new friend, and he would tell me about his new friend, he would never say how they were different. He would
Right.
tell me immediately, they like Star Wars, they like Legos, and he would immediately seek what they have in common.
Yes, it's so pure and they have so much love in their heart. And we wish we could keep that as adults, that children-like mentality into
Exactly.
adulthood. And we wish that,
Exactly.
but you know.
Again, back to my stay this way forever.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of things that we have to hold on to even
Yes.
when we grow older.
Yes. Keep that mentality that way
Yes.
forever.
Yes.
It'd be a better
Yes.
world. I wanted to congratulate you. You are the co-anchor of ABC Weekend News. It's so exciting and I'm so happy for you. It's the first time, I believe in like 18 years that a Black
That's
woman
right.
has been an
That's right.
anchor. What kind of honor is that for you to be a part of this?
Well, I feel really blessed. I'm grateful to have the seat at the table. I've been talking about Shirley Chisholm, first Black Congresswoman, who said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And so I
Yeah.
feel really fortunate to have been, given this seat at the table. I think that we need it to be crowded with lots of perspectives and lots of, people who are coming from various backgrounds in all aspects, in all walks of life. I think that it makes us all better, not just because, right now, the idea that representation matters is trending or, sounds good.
Mhm.
It shouldn't be a cliche. It shouldn't be just a moment that passes us by, but something that we really live by and something that we hold on to. It is a responsibility that I feel, has a weightiness to it.
Yeah.
But one that, I look forward to the days when, as my son grows up, who's 7 now, but he won't think about, I think, that in terms of, oh, this was the first Black person or
Yeah.
this was the second Black person, because hopefully we will just have seen it so much that we aren't keeping track anymore,
Right.
because it's just a part of life and it's just expected that people who work hard achieve and excel. And
Right.
and so I look forward to that time where we're not worried about ruining it for the next person of color or the next
Right.
woman or whatever it might be. That we're rewarded on our skill and the merit based society that doesn't limit you because or excludes you because of your color, your gender, or your sexuality.
It's got to feel like so important to you, though. I mean, it's been since what, 1988? Was it since Carol
In the
Simpson?
80s, right? Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, she was a trailblazer, and to see you take that torch and run with it and be so great in doing what you do, I'm sure she was very proud to see you take over, you know?
She sent a very nice message, I think on Twitter,
Yeah,
talking about exactly that, kind of passing the torch. And
yeah,
I think that, I did interview her before I took the spot, and she talked about her disappointment really was, these are my words, not hers exactly, but the idea was that she was disappointed it took this long, that, nearly
yeah.
2 decades after she vacated the seat, that it would take so long for another Black woman, because she felt, and she did really bust that glass ceiling. And so then you expect more will come through. And so for it to take such a long period of time, I think she saw as a disappointment, but at the same time, it's happening now. And
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
so I'm optimistic about that.
I was reading a quote that you said, and I loved it. You said something about, I report the facts and let the people at home decide on how they want to interpret it. And I actually love that. Why did you make that quote?
I don't remember the context of it, but I will say that that's what it is. I mean,
Yeah,
at the heart of me, I don't think that, the fact that I'm a Black woman changes the way that I'm delivering the news, right?
yeah,
I mean, I am intentional about getting it right and being fair and making sure that both sides are, or if there's more than 2 sides, that all the
yeah,
sides are included and told. And it's not our job as journalists to make you see a certain way. Unfortunately, a lot of the journalism that the networks and this constant news a lot of times people pander, I think, and want to just give people more of what they want to hear and reinforce their
Yeah.
beliefs, and not really kind of inform them in a well-rounded sense. And that is really my goal every day, that you're going to hear, perhaps more than you would have. I think that I do make sure that I'm very intentional about making sure that we are representative of society, and that we include, a lot of diversity, and that we include voices that in the past we may not have heard from.
Yeah.
And so I think in that way, my race or my gender may inform, what I'm really kind of paying attention to on the full spectrum of the news.
Right.
But in the end, I'm not trying to make you think a certain way. I'm just trying to present the facts.
Right. Exactly. And there is no such thing as alternative facts. The facts are the facts. You let people do their own interpretation. And that's like good old school journalism that we need more of today.
Yes, I would like to see myself as just like just the facts, ma'am. That used to be, one of the taglines in an old show. And that's how I see myself.
Back in, I think it was 2019, you were moderating the Democratic debate, and you had some tough questions for then Senator Kamala Harris, which was great that you were applauded for. Right now, how proud are you for her, seeing her as the first Black woman vice president of the United States in history? How proud are you of her?
Oh, well, certainly. I want to go back, because I do think that people focus just on that moment, but I did have tough questions for Amy Klobuchar. I had tough questions for Joe Biden. Subsequently, I had really tough questions the next debate for Pete Buttigieg. But a lot of people really focused on that Kamala Harris question. But I'm so excited for, in particular, young girls in general, but Black and brown girls in particular, that are growing up to, people often say, and I agree with this and I don't. I see it from both sides, okay? The idea that you have to see something in order to be it, I do, by and large, believe that, right?
Yeah, right.
At the same time, when I look at the Shirley Chisholms and the Carol Simpsons and the people who blaze their own trail, they didn't wait to have that role model example in order to decide, I'm going to go do it. Right.
Right.
So I do see it. I always encourage young people in general, like, just because somebody hasn't checked that box yet of something you want to do, don't let that be something that limits you or, paints you into a corner. But it certainly helps so much to see someone who looks like you achieve and excel in a way that it's possible for you. Yeah. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And somebody else already did the hard work of breaking that ceiling. Right. And so I think that I know that Kamala Harris has done that for young girls, that I can do it. I can get to the second highest office in the land and beyond, and so, it really was this monumental shift that we saw at this last inauguration for a number of reasons. And I have to think that she is aware of what that means, the ramifications of her aspiring to that position. There's such a ripple effect that is yet unknown and unseen, right? Yeah. Of the leaders who are going to rise up as a result of that moment.
Right. Absolutely. And how confident are you in our new current administration that they're going to be able to turn things around for the better in 2021?
Oh, well, that remains to be seen. That's where, again, I'll just stick with the facts, and we'll see how the public judges the job that they do. Right. And so we'll have to, the jury is still out on that, and I'll leave a lot of that up to, time will tell.
Absolutely. So now, in closing, you are a fantastic journalist. There are so many young Black and brown girls looking up to you, paving the way on ABC News as a journalist, an anchor, and they're so proud of you. What is the one bit of advice that you would give to young Black girls and brown girls to achieve their goals in journalism and the media industry?
Sure. Well, I know for me, what really worked was setting benchmarks that incrementally got me to my goal. So let's throw out our pie in the sky, our best possible outcome, right, of what we ultimately desire.
Mm-hmm.
But don't measure yourself against that every day. Now what you need to do is backtrack to, okay, well, what would this mean? What would this mean? And so for me, I set up these just kind of random milestones of, by the time I'm 25, I want to be in a top 25 market.
Right.
By the time I'm 30, I want to get to the network. And that helped so much, because it really, I had a path that I would set goals that were lofty but were achievable at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to hit each one, and there were a lot of times where it didn't look like I would be able to. When I was 24, I got into Indianapolis, which was the 25th market. So I made it to the lowest rank, but I still, was able to achieve the goal. And so I would encourage young people to have, look at the world being your oyster. And then just make, some realistic goals for yourself. Find a mentor.
Yeah.
Even if it's not somebody who's, having lunch with you monthly, or, having those regular calls to check in. A lot of times people are inherently good and will help you out. And so for each person who says no, you can find somebody who's in the field, who's doing it already, who's dealt with these obstacles. And quite often, you're going to find somebody who's willing to kind of take you under their wing. And I know that I had people who did that for me, and I in turn do that for you. Even for the times that I had people who were cold and kind of shut me out, I've made a promise to myself, I'm never going to be that way. So I stretch myself extra thin, trying to make sure that I help people who are coming up and young in this field to make sure that they don't feel the way that I did sometimes when people weren't so willing to help. So I would say make milestones and find mentors and pray your way through the rest.
And you are so right. That's great advice, Lindsay. And getting a mentor is very important, because you're so right. People are inherently nice. And when you help people, it makes you feel better about yourself. And
100%.
that just works for both parties, right?
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, I am so excited. Tell all of my viewers and listeners, where can they get your brand new children's book, Stay This Way Forever? Where can they get it? It's a bestseller.
Anywhere books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you go for your books, you can find Stay This Way Forever. And thank you, Jason.
Oh, thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. And of course, we'll be checking out on ABC News for Weekend World News. Absolutely. Congratulations to you on all of your success, Lindsay.
Thank you so much.
In this book it's really a love letter to children. I love it. So how do you want them to feel when they read this book?
I want children to feel and know that they are loved and adored and cherished, and specifically for why. I mean, parents often tell their children, perhaps several times a day, I love you. But we often don't tell them, I love you because, for the specifics, because of your curiosity or your creativity or your laugh or your joy or your playfulness. And I think it'll be so powerful for parents to read this book to their children.
I'm Lindsay Davis, and I'm in the hot zone.